I mean, I've honestly never been on a team that's good in scrims, and I'll admit I'm largely a problem. The reason we're not doing good in scrims.
So I'm here with eXyu. You just had an amazing game on Vi. Did Mask int you in like a solo queue or a challengers queue game? Like you were just like ulting him on repeat. He was like 0-7. You guys were just like going on him. You and Rakan. Like talk to me about that game. Was that the game plan?
I mean, I think Azir is just a broken champion, and they had Jin, and that guy's really useless. So like, they only had one champion that we had to kill that game, and that was my job. So
Okay, it seemed like Jin was doing a lot, especially his curtain call. Like one bullet was like 50% of person's HP. But um, talk to me about your starting role on Dignitas. So actually, a lot of people don't know who you are. Can you tell people like a little bit about your story and what they can expect from you, and maybe a fun fact about yourself?
yeah, sure. So I came up through the amateur system, even the collegiate system a little bit. I played at UC Berkeley. That was like my first competitive team, and we weren't super competitive because obviously we're not a school known for esports, but we did pretty well, and I had a lot of fun. So then I started getting more committed to it, and then I joined C9 Academy, or C9 Amateur actually, for a year, and then I went to Dignitas for Academy for 1.5 years, and then they cut the Academy program, so then I was a sub for LCS, and now I'm starting on the LCS team. And a fun fact, I really like Lee Sin. It's not really that fun because I feel like all the junglers do, so maybe the fun fact will be that I hover Katarina for my girlfriend.
Oh, okay. Well, speaking of Lee Sin, he's a mechanically intensive champion. And you had previously went on and talked about like wrist issues.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so talk to me a little bit about the wrist issues and like sort of, is that something the team told you like, hey, you should get it checked out? Is that something you wanted to check out yourself? Like, talk to me about that.
It was definitely something that I did on my own. It was much more of a preventative measure than a urgent, like, I need help. It was like I'm starting to notice that I don't feel the same, and I want to take as many steps as possible to prevent, like, actual problems, because I want to have a long career. So, yeah, and I've worked with Jordan for a while, and it was just nice to talk to him again and have him help me figure stuff out, so.
Okay, I watched your video and I tried doing some of the exercises and I realized, oh snap, my wrists feel the same, so maybe I should do them too. Are you consistently doing them? Have you been able to develop that habit?
Yeah, I think I honestly I feel a lot better. I really like that he was telling me to like slowly warm up, getting back into the rhythm of being like a full-time player, and you know, I think the steps of like, hey, like play like 6 games in a row and then try to play like 8 and like constantly stretch, and I think it really helped. So I feel really good for this season.
All right, awesome. What's the team atmosphere like? Because I know you said in the post-game interview that you're not doing too hot in scrims, and I know it can get really hard to like improve and learn when scrims aren't going great. So what's the team environment like?
I mean, I've honestly never been on a team that's good in scrims, and I'll admit I'm largely a problem. The reason we're not doing good in scrims. I
Do
think
you
it's just
sprint
'cause
or?
in scrims, I just like to push my limits a lot, and sometimes not even in good ways. Maybe I just lack focus or something. It just doesn't feel as urgent. But I think everything that I learn from scrims, I really internalize, whether I'm showing that in scrims or not. And I think that really shows when I play on stage games. So even last year when we were on Dig Challengers, like we were not a good scrim team either. But every time we go to stage, it feels like all the lessons that I learned during scrims really come together and show on stage.
So you had a couple stints. I think you played in a lock-in as well in LCS. So you played a few times here and there. But what does it feel like being a starter? Is there like a lot of pressure on you? I know you said like you weren't nervous, but then once the game started, you were a little like how have you been handling that pressure?
Personally, I don't feel any pressure. I mean, everyone's got us 8th, which honestly I like because like there's no pressure. And then I really like that I'm working with Enetron and Mabry again. They're coaches that I worked with initially in lock-in. I just feel like I'm really close to them, so it's easy to work with them, and they can be very honest with me without having to like sugarcoat things because we've been through all the things, like we're close already. So I know it's not personal. And then, yeah, I mean, I think they do a good job of taking the blame off. Like we kind of joke about it, but sometimes I feel like it helps where they're just like, if we lose, it's our fault, you know? Like, it's not the player's fault. It's like, we didn't coach you well enough, we didn't draft well enough, and I think, like, for me, that kind of alleviates a lot of pressure, because I'm like, I'm going to go out there, do my best, and whatever happens, we're going to figure it out after. But
All right. Speaking of the team, who's the like in-game leader? Who's like giving the team a direction and making calls? You and your bot lane are like relatively less experienced compared to Dove, for example, but I don't know how Dove and Rich their English is like. So who's making the calls?
Uh, I think me and Jonah, or me and Isles, we do most of the yapping. So we just talk, not the most important things, but we're the ones constantly talking. But when Rich or Dove say something, like you listen, like it's important, but they don't talk much. But when they do, I always listen to them. But if they're not talking, I'm just going to keep yapping with Jonah, and we're going to try to figure out something until they figure out what they want to do. So
I love that you just keep yapping. I don't know if you heard, but Kelsey Moser in an interview that I did with her, she talked about like directional versus informational comms, and she was like, we were at EG, we were trying to get rid of like a lot of the informational comms if they're not directive. If they're not, it's like, okay, the reason I'm telling you this is for this, but it's funny. You're just like, oh yeah, we're yapping.
I mean, I'm just going to say everything that I think, and if they think something else, they can tell me, and I'll listen if I think it's correct, or I'll be like, hey, like what I think is good, and yeah, I think a lot of what I do and what Jonah does is we ask a lot of questions, and I think that's really important on a team where people don't talk that much, because like I'll just constantly press Dove and be like, yo, like, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? Like, hey, I have nothing to do. Do you want to do this? Like, and just be on him. So, and then he'll eventually respond to me.
Eventually he'll respond. That's funny. My next question is about the new like reduced times in between games. Like this is your first time like starting, but you have played in the LCS a few times before and on challengers. Do you feel like that made a difference, being able to like spend some time and talk about draft and whatnot, and have like this sort of break where you might like lose focus and whatnot?
I don't think it matters that much. I think we kind of came up with a game plan within the normal window, and then we kind of just sat around and like chilled. And then when we got on stage, we were like, hey, just to go over what we already talked about, let's do this, and then went into game.
All right, awesome. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you guys for watching. It's been really fun having this experience of just doing LCS interviews through the LCS, like post game. I have not done this before. This was week 1. Honestly, I think my interviews kind of sucked. I think day 2 were a lot better than day 1 this week, but hopefully I keep improving. You guys have any feedback, let me know, and make sure to hit that subscribe button, because I am trying to sign up for the LPP and I need 1,000 subs, so keep them coming.